You're waiting for your Uber, thinking it's just another ride, but as soon as you get in, everything goes wrong. The driver isn't human, the streets don't lead anywhere, and shadowy figures begin closing in. It was late, later than I should have been out, honestly, but I was at the bar with some friends, just trying to blow off some steam after a crazy week. You know how it goes, work's been a nightmare, everything's stressful, and a few drinks are the best way to forget about it all. The night air was crisp, the streets were mostly quiet as I stumbled out of the bar, fumbling with my phone to call an Uber. I wasn't looking to walk, especially not with how much I had to drink. So, I hit the app, requested a ride, and went to stand on the sidewalk, waiting for my driver to pull up. When the car showed up, it wasn't anything special, a dark sedan, nothing flashy, just the usual. I slid into the back seat, feeling the warmth from the heater. It was nice, especially considering how cold it had gotten. The driver didn't say much at first, just a small nod when I got in. I figured he was just one of those quiet types. That's fine by me. I wasn't in the mood for conversation anyway, but there was something off about him. He looked too calm, too still. At first, I didn't think much of it. You get all sorts of Uber drivers, some are talkative, some are total strangers, but I could feel his eyes in the rearview mirror, flicking over to me more than usual. It was subtle, but unsettling, like he was paying attention to every little move I made. I was trying to focus on my phone screen, scrolling through social media, but I couldn't shake the feeling that his gaze was sticking to me. I told myself to relax. Maybe I was just paranoid. After all, it was late, I was alone, and my mind wasn't exactly in a rational state after a few drinks, but as the car pulled away from the curb, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The car hummed along, and I glanced out the window, watching the city lights flicker past. It should have been a simple ride, just a straight shot home, but as we passed the usual intersections, I noticed something strange. The driver wasn't going the usual route. "Hey, is there some kind of detour going on?" I asked, trying to sound casual. The driver didn't immediately answer. Instead, he just kept his eyes on the road, his grip tight on the wheel. After what felt like a long pause, he muttered something that barely reached my ears. "Oh, just a better way. Trust me." I wasn't sure why, but I didn't feel reassured. In fact, I felt even more uncomfortable. Something about the way he said it, the tone, the lack of explanation, made my skin crawl. I shrugged it off again, figuring he knew the area better than I did. I'd had Uber drivers take detours before, especially when traffic was bad or when they were just trying to avoid a red light. But this time, the detour felt wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was as if we were going out of our way for no reason. And then it hit me. We weren't just heading down some unfamiliar street, we were looping around, backtracking, going in circles. We passed the same landmarks twice, then 3 times. I checked the map on my phone, but the route made no sense. We weren't getting closer to my place. If anything, we were driving farther and farther away. "Hey, man, where are we going?" I said, now a little more forcefully, trying to hide the edge of panic creeping into my voice. But this time, he didn't even respond. He just kept driving, his hands gripping the steering wheel with an intensity that made me uneasy. I checked the rearview mirror, and there it was again, that look, that cold, steady gaze. It wasn't just a glance anymore. He was watching me, studying me. My heart started to race. I felt trapped. There was no other car on the road, and the street lights were flickering, casting long, eerie shadows across the asphalt. The night felt too quiet, too still, and the silence in the car was deafening. I was trying to stay calm. Maybe he was just an idiot, a driver who didn't know where he was going. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I needed to get out of there. But every time I thought about asking him to stop, something in my gut told me I shouldn't. Something about his presence, the way he was driving, it felt deliberate, like he was leading me somewhere, and I wasn't sure I wanted to find out where. I pulled up the Uber app on my phone again, looking for a way to contact someone or even end the ride early. But just as I was about to press the cancel ride button, I noticed the map on my phone. It was glitching, the dots weren't aligning, and the route wasn't updating. It was like the app was malfunctioning, like it was trying to hide something from me. That's when the first chill ran down my spine. I looked back up at the driver. His face was completely expressionless now, his eyes locked straight ahead, not once glancing at me. He wasn't making small talk. He wasn't apologizing for the detour. He was waiting, and I had the horrible, gut-wrenching feeling that he was waiting for something or someone. This story seems to be getting scarier, doesn't it? If you want more stories like this, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. This helps create even more scary for you. I should have said something then. I should have told him to stop, to let me out of the car right there, but for some reason, I didn't. Maybe it was the alcohol in my system. Maybe it was my hesitation to make things awkward, but I didn't want to make a scene. The silence in the car grew heavier by the second, pressing in on me, suffocating me with a sense of impending danger. It felt like we were no longer just driving through a city. We were in some kind of void, a limbo where the rules of time and space didn't apply. I checked the app again. The location was completely off now. It showed us moving away from my home, further into an industrial area I didn't recognize. But the most unsettling part? The app was no longer showing the driver's name or profile picture. It was just a blank screen with a spinning wheel. "Hey," I said, my voice shaky. "This isn't the way. My house is in the opposite direction." I waited for a response, any kind of response, but he didn't even look at me. He didn't even acknowledge me. He just drove on, the road ahead stretching into an abyss. It was like he hadn't even heard me. The flickering lights outside the car made everything look warped, like the world was melting. My stomach twisted as the car passed through areas I knew I shouldn't be. Dead ends, alleyways, long stretches of abandoned streets. I realized we hadn't passed a single other vehicle for what felt like forever. No one was out here, not a soul. I wanted to scream, to yell at him to stop, but somehow, I couldn't bring myself to do it. Something was stopping me. It wasn't fear, at least not the kind of fear I was used to. It was something else, something primal. We made another turn, and that's when I saw it. A figure standing on the side of the road. A person. At first, I thought it was just a shadow or maybe a trick of the light, but as the car got closer, I could see it more clearly. A man, standing motionless by a street lamp, his face obscured by the darkness. He wasn't moving. He wasn't waving for help. He wasn't trying to flag us down. He was just there, watching. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't right. "Who is that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. But again, the driver didn't answer. He didn't even react. We got closer to the figure, and I could feel my heart racing in my chest. I could see his eyes now, glowing faintly in the dim light. They were wide open, unblinking, and staring directly at me through the window. I wanted to look away. I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen him, but something in his gaze held me in place. He wasn't just looking at me, he was looking through me. As we passed him, I felt an icy shiver run down my spine, but then, something else happened. The car slowed, almost as if it had been programmed to do so. The engine hummed lower, the tires rolling to a stop just a few feet away from the figure. I froze. The figure didn't move, but I could hear something, a sound. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, like a low murmur or a whisper. And then the driver spoke. His voice was soft, almost reverent. "They're waiting," he said. My stomach dropped. I felt the color drain from my face. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. What did he mean? "They're waiting?" Before I could ask, the figure at the side of the road began to move, but not in the way I expected. It was slow, deliberate, like a puppet with strings being pulled from above. Its limbs jerked unnaturally, and its body seemed to sway with every movement, like it was being dragged by an invisible force. "Don't worry," the driver said, his eyes still fixed on the road. "We're almost there." Almost there? Almost where? I couldn't make sense of it. Every rational thought in my brain was screaming at me to get out of the car, to run, to do anything but sit there and let this unfold. But my body wouldn't respond. I was frozen in place, a prisoner of my own fear. the figures started walking toward the car. Each step was slow, dragging. It was getting closer, closer, closer. Suddenly, the car jerked forward again, breaking the spell. The driver's foot had pressed on the gas, speeding us down the road, but the figure was still following us, moving impossibly fast, keeping pace with the car like it had been waiting for this moment. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I turned to the driver, desperate for answers. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted. "What are you doing?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he just glanced in the rearview mirror. For the first time, his expression shifted. There was a flicker of something, a grin, maybe, but it was so quick, so fleeting, I couldn't be sure. All I knew was that I had to get out. "Stop the car," I demanded. "Let me out, now." But the car didn't stop. It kept going, and the figure didn't stop following. I had no idea what was happening, but I could feel it now, a presence. Something dark, something terrible, and it wasn't just the figure. It was everything around us. The silence, the emptiness, the way the world felt wrong, like it was being twisted by something far beyond my comprehension. We passed another intersection, and that's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. At the corner of the street, there were more figures standing motionless, just like the first one. They were waiting. And the driver, he was still smiling. The car sped down the road, but it didn't matter how fast we went. The more we drove, the more I realized we weren't going anywhere at all. The road was endless, a loop of empty streets, each corner more desolate than the last. I couldn't tell if we were in the city anymore. The usual landmarks were gone, replaced by dark, towering buildings that seemed to be closing in around us. I felt the walls of the car closing in too. The air was thick, heavy, like something was pressing down on my chest. My hands were clammy, my heart hammering so loud I was sure the driver could hear it. Every time I glanced at the rearview mirror, I could see them, those figures, standing still on the corners of every intersection we passed. They weren't moving, but their eyes followed us. I tried to focus on my phone, desperately pulling up the map, hoping to see something that made sense, but the screen was still glitching, the map distorted. The dots were no longer moving in real time. It was like the app was frozen in place, as if the world around us had stopped. "Where the hell are we?" I whispered, more to myself than to the driver. But the words felt useless, hollow. I knew the answer before he even spoke. "We're nowhere," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "This place, it's not real." I could feel the blood drain from my face. What did he mean? What was he talking about? I was about to ask him again, to demand some kind of explanation, but then something shifted in the air, something that made my skin crawl. A sudden, sharp chill hit me. Even though the car's heater was still running, I turned to look out the window, and that's when I saw it. A shadow. It was moving across the street, shifting from one dark corner to another. I thought I saw something in the shadow, something long and thin, stretching like a grotesque arm reaching for the car. I blinked, and it was gone, but the feeling of being watched, being hunted, didn't leave. I snapped my gaze back to the driver. His hands were still gripping the wheel tightly, but his face had changed. He wasn't calm anymore. His lips were pulled back in a grimace, his eyes wide and hollow. He wasn't human, not in the way he had been just moments ago. He was something else now, something dark. "We're getting close," he said, his voice hollow. "They'll come for you soon, and once they do, you won't be able to leave." Who's coming for me?" I demanded, my voice trembling. I didn't even recognize myself anymore. The fear in my tone, the panic that was rising up like bile in my throat. But he didn't answer. Instead, he turned the wheel sharply, and the car veered into another street, one that seemed to stretch on endlessly. It wasn't a street I had ever seen before. It looked wrong. The buildings around us were crumbling, the streetlights flickering erratically as if they were about to die. And then, there they were again, the figures. This time, there were more of them. At first, I thought I was seeing things, but no, there were at least 5 or 6 people standing at every corner, their faces hidden in the darkness, their eyes glowing faintly in the night. They weren't just standing there anymore. Now, they were walking slowly toward us, their movements jerky, unnatural, like puppets being controlled by strings. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. It was like my voice had been stolen from me. The terror was suffocating, choking me as I stared at the figures. Their eyes, they weren't normal eyes. They were too wide, too deep, and they seemed to stare straight into my soul. And then I heard something else, a voice, a soft, distant whisper, like it was coming from all directions at once. "You shouldn't have gotten in the car. You shouldn't have trusted him." I spun around, looking for the source of the voice, but there was no one else in the car. It was just me and the driver. But the voice, it felt real. It felt like it was inside my head, like it was speaking directly to me. I looked back at the driver, my pulse racing, and that's when I saw it. His reflection in the rearview mirror wasn't the same. It was distorted, twisted. The eyes in the mirror weren't the same eyes that were in his head. They were darker, hollow, black pits that seemed to suck in the light. His grin, once faint, was now a wide, toothy sneer that stretched unnaturally across his face. "They are coming," he whispered, barely audible. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was stare at the horror unfolding before me. And then I saw something that made my blood freeze. The road ahead, once dark and empty, was now filled with people. They were everywhere, standing in the middle of the street, crowding the sidewalks, their eyes fixed on the car. They didn't move, but they didn't have to. Their presence filled the space, like an overwhelming force that squeezed the air out of my lungs. I looked down at my phone again. The map was completely gone. It had been replaced by a single, blinking message. "You cannot leave. Stop the car," I shouted, my voice raw, but my hands were shaking, and my heart was pounding so loudly I couldn't hear anything else. "Let me out. I need to get out." But the driver didn't listen. He just grinned wider. And then, without warning, the car stopped. The car's engine hummed quietly in the stillness, but everything else felt completely deafening. The air around me was thick with tension, thick with dread. My hands gripped the seat beneath me, nails digging into the leather, trying to anchor myself to something, anything that could break this awful spell. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could barely breathe. The reality of the situation was becoming clear. I wasn't just stuck in an Uber ride anymore. I wasn't just lost in some unfamiliar area. I was trapped in a place I didn't understand, with a driver I didn't recognize, surrounded by people who shouldn't be there. "Why did you stop?" I managed to croak out, my voice hoarse, as though it had been stolen from me. My entire body was shaking now, my hands trembling uncontrollably. My breath came in ragged gasps, but I couldn't calm myself down, not when I could feel their eyes on me. Every single person standing out there in the darkness, waiting, watching. The driver didn't answer. He just sat there, unmoving, his hands still locked onto the wheel. That terrible grin hadn't left his face, but it was changing. It was growing, stretching wider, the edges of his mouth curling unnaturally far, like his face was being pulled into a grotesque, inhuman expression. You're not real," I whispered to myself, the words slipping out before I even realized I was speaking them. The terrifying thoughts seemed to echo in my head. I had to be dreaming. I had to be. This wasn't real. But as the car's headlights illuminated the road, I saw them, the figures. They were closer now, much closer, and they were moving toward the car. Their faces, those empty, hollow eyes, were fixed on me. They weren't human. They couldn't be. And then, something happened. The air seemed to ripple, like the fabric of reality was being torn apart. The figures, these people, or whatever they were, started to shift. Their bodies flickered, like static on a broken television screen. One moment, they were there, standing perfectly still, and the next, they were different. Their forms elongated, twisted, and distorted into something far worse. Limbs stretching far too long, skin stretching and ripping as though it couldn't hold itself together. The faces weren't just masks of horror, they were masks of torment, a tortured expression frozen on each one. I felt the cold sweat break out across my back. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was paralyzed, watching these horrific figures slowly encircle the car. And then, a voice. It was the same voice from before, the one that had whispered in my ear. Only now, it wasn't just a whisper, it was a low, guttural growl, filling the space around me, suffocating me. You shouldn't have gotten in, you should have stayed away. Now, you're one of us. My heart skipped a beat. One of us? What did that even mean? I turned to the driver again, desperate. Who are you? What do you want from me? My voice cracked with fear, desperation hanging on every syllable. Please, just let me out. I swear I won't tell anyone. I'll leave you alone. Just let me go. He didn't respond. He didn't even acknowledge me. His eyes, those hollow pits, were locked on the road ahead, but I could see his fingers twitching, as if they were controlling the car by their own will. I realized then that he wasn't just a driver, he was something else, something that didn't belong to this world. He was part of this place, this twisted, unreal existence where the rules didn't apply. The figures grew closer. I could see the grotesque detail now, the way their faces had been warped by suffering. Their eyes, those black holes, had no end. The edges of their mouths were stretched into painful, unholy smiles. They were silent, but I could feel them, pressing against the car, their presence suffocating. I glanced back at the driver again, a thought suddenly occurring to me. There was something wrong about him. I had assumed he was human, but now I knew he wasn't, not anymore. Please, I begged again, but this time, my voice was more desperate. Who are you? What are you? The grin on his face grew even wider, stretching farther, like his face was being pulled apart. His eyes remained locked on the road ahead, but there was a dark gleam in them now, a gleam that told me everything I needed to know. You're not meant to be here, he said finally, his voice low and cold, like it was coming from far away. But you are, and now, you'll stay. A chill washed over me, my blood turned to ice, my mind raced, my thoughts in chaos. But one thing stood out. He wasn't just talking about the ride, he wasn't talking about the car, he was talking about me. I wasn't meant to be here, but I was, and now, I would never leave. Suddenly, everything went black. It wasn't like the lights went out or the world faded. It was like I was, cold, like I had been dragged into another reality. The sounds of the figures, their horrible whispers, their grotesque movements stopped. All at once, the cold air, the suffocating presence, vanished. I was in darkness, an oppressive void that had no beginning and no end. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, like I was sinking deeper, farther into something I couldn't escape. And then, the voice again, that same low, guttural growl. Welcome to your new home. And with that, I knew I wasn't going back. This place, whatever it was, had taken me. The figures were waiting. The driver was one of them, and I was now part of their world. I wasn't just trapped in the car anymore. I was trapped in the darkness. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts on this terrifying story, and subscribe for more spine-chilling horror tales.